Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tech Tip Talk. I'm Sarah Walworth.
I'm Kristina McGrath, and we are Knitting Tech Editors.
Oh,
Roll it, Sarah.
intro. So here on Tech Tip Talk, we answer your questions about tech editing and knitting design and pattern writing. And we invite you now to throw any questions that you have into the chat, and we'll do our best to answer.
So this month, we're talking with Jessica Ays, who's a designer teacher, and her design company is Double the Stitches. She has a really robust online community. And what really impresses us about Jessica is how she has learned how she's learned from her personal experiences in a way that transforms um, her her teaching style and how she connects with her makers. And you guys know we're all about community here, so we're really excited to hear what she has to share with us about that.
Yeah, let's bring her up. And here she is. Center
Hey,
stage.
Jessica.
I am
Hey.
so honored and so thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
You
You
are
bet.
very
We're psyched to have
welcome.
you. Thank you so much for coming on.
And thank you to everyone who is here live. Hi, Jen. Hi, Robin. Hi, Liz. Hi, Anita. We're so excited that you all are here. So if you do have any questions for Jessica, throw it into the chat. Jessica, it's so exciting to talk to someone who has made community part of their business model. Both of us feel community is one of the most important things that you can foster in the industry. So let's get going on some questions. You ready, Kristina?
Yeah, start right at the beginning. We love
All
that.
right. Oops, I hit it.
I hit it too. All right, Jessica, how did you get started working in the knitting industry?
So I started like many designers. Someone taught me, I actually started with crochet, and someone taught me how to chain and single crochet. And that was probably about 25 years ago. I have not put the yarn down since.
Yay.
I think I made a New Year's resolution to myself after my children were born that I wanted to learn to knit because I loved the look of the knitted fabric and I wanted to knit them all the things. But P.S. the shoemaker's children have no shoes, so they're still waiting for their sweaters from mommy. But they get the hats and other things like that. Um, and I just spent so much time, revising patterns. Was I'm always looking to, I don't know, monetize things in a way. And so I was making for people. People would ask, can you make a baby gift for my friend? And that developed into, well, I guess if my friend is paying me to make something, then maybe strangers will pay me to make something. And so that led to, the Etsy shop and all of those things. And I loved making small things because of the, instant gratification, the satisfaction of a finished project. And so I started knitting and crocheting newborn photography props. So I was working with newborn photographers. The beauty of that is that they were making an investment for their studio. So they would buy the beautiful, little newborn romper knit out of 100% Angora yarn, which was, I'd be covered in Angora, but they would spend the money on it because it was an investment. It was something that they could offer to multiple clients, whereas most new moms, it's not a practical thing. Babies are adorable, but not neat.
And Angora is hot.
And Angora is hot, but it's so soft and beautiful and luxurious in photos. So I got the most beautiful pictures back from the photographers to share. And that was, just such a thrill. But it got to a point where I was getting burnt out because I was knitting the same hat or the same bonnet or the same outfit over and over on repeat. And what added to that, besides kind of that like boredom or burnout of the same thing over and over, was also that babies are on their own schedule. So even though, the photographer and I made a plan that they needed these outfits in 3 weeks, the baby came early and now, I need it like in 2 days.
Or yesterday.
And so with hand knits, that's, not always a problem. And that was a big frustration for me. And at the time I was working in my local yarn store and I was doing some teaching. I was doing some, pattern writing where I was scribbling things down on a piece of paper. And the yarn shop owner said, "That's silly. Don't do that. type it up, we'll have it edited, and you'll put it on Ravelry and you'll sell it, and then you can sell it to the customers or offer it to them for free as part of the class. And so that kind of launched into a whole thing. And I was doing both for a little bit there. And then it was another New Year's resolution, January of 2020, without knowing what was going to happen in March. And I said, you know what? I'm really, really exhausted. I'm exhausted sitting up till, 3 o'clock in the morning, finishing something on a rush order and having to run to the post office before work in the morning to get it shipped out. And I just can't do this anymore. And for my mental health and for my sanity and for, family life, like I was no good to anyone. I wasn't good to myself. I wasn't, awake and energetic to be there, for my kids. Or to function well, just in all aspects. And so I made this resolution. I said, that's it. I am not knitting. I'm not selling my finished knits anymore. I'm going to pivot. I'm going to focus on patterns. I'm going to learn how to be the best designer that I can be. I'm going to take my own experiences and kind of put it into all of that.
Wow, that's quite a journey.
It is.
I remember that. I remember back then because I sold knitting for a little while too when I first when I was my kids were younger, and
Yeah.
I remember all those baby prop like pictures, all those knitted things. I remember all of that back then when I was doing that. That's so
It's
awesome.
interesting that you went from maker to pattern creator to teacher. And it's funny how a lot of us in this industry go through this this transformation from just being a maker to being something more. So when you started designing, did you feel like there was an audience for your patterns? How did it grow?
So I was lucky because I was working in a yarn shop at the time. So I kind of had that instant feedback from customers in the store of knowing, when they walk in, what they're looking for. So
Right.
that helped a lot to know what, real people in the wild, so to speak, are actually, when they go into a yarn store, what kind of patterns are they looking for? What kind of yarns are they looking to create with? So that helped. I had that kind of instant, built in people that I could ask for feedback, in person, and knitters who would, test my patterns for me, from the shop. And so that sense of, wanting to have that feedback and wanting to have that, yarn shop is a community in a sense, in a
Yeah,
lot of
absolutely.
ways,
Yep.
Um, and so wanting to have more of that connection with the people that were buying my patterns online, um, that kind of led me into, wanting to have community kind of at the center, at the heart of what I do.
Which leads us to our next question. What inspired you to build a community around your business? I think you kind of already half
I
answered
kind
this,
of
but
did, yeah.
let's go deeper. Let's go deeper.
Um, so we all, as designers, I think, post on all the social media and try to find our people and try to find our audience. And I just always feel like when I'm posting on Instagram or on my Facebook business page, I feel like I've said this to you guys, that I'm shouting into the void, that I'm putting things out there and maybe I get like 1 like or 2 likes, hearts and whatever. You ask a question and maybe if you're lucky you get an answer or 2,
Mm.
and sometimes it falls completely flat. And so I wanted to make a safe space. I wanted to make a space where people could gather. Um, I don't limit my community to just posting about my patterns, but I don't, often invite other designers in to share their work.
Mhm.
But I don't want to exclude and say, oh, I didn't design that, so you can't share that with me. But I
Right.
wanted to, I want to encourage them. I want to help them. I want to teach them. I think that as a designer, by teaching the way that I'm doing things helps give people a better, understanding of how I'm writing it and what I mean when I say different things. And having that community is where I can get that feedback from them of what they're struggling with. What are they finding hard? How can I kind of fill those gaps? What things are they excited about making? Um, And so having it in this private Facebook group is it's a safe space where they can share, what they're doing. If they're working on a gift, they don't have to worry about, their cousin or sister or whoever seeing what they're working on,
Right.
or just they posted it on their public page. And I think that a lot of makers, and I really think just consumers in general, they want to buy from a person if they have that option, and they want to get to know who they're buying from. And so having that community gives that two-way conversation as compared to having an email list where sometimes you get replies, but in the general sense, it's a one-way conversation. It's like a billboard. It's me telling you, what I'm thinking or what I'm doing or what I'm up to. And even if you get a reply back from someone on your list responding to what you talked about, the conversation is just between the two of
Between the
you, and
two of
there's no
you, right?
larger group conversation, because if one person is wondering something, others likely are wondering the same thing too,
Yeah,
or have
exactly.
their own experiences to share.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned that it's a Facebook group. So tell us a little bit about where you host your community.
So I kind of have 2
Maybe
communities.
maybe share how you got there,
How
because
I got there,
yeah,
okay.
like why didn't you choose another place or just like keep it all in Instagram comments or something like that?
So I wanted it to be a private place where, people could share. I wanted to meet people where they were already. And so, as a designer, you kind of go through these, trying to figure out who your audience is. And you can see that on, the larger social media. If you dive into stats on, say, Instagram or whatever, it'll tell you, who's engaging with your posts. And so I discovered that my audience tended to be on the more mature side. They tended not to be, millennials or elder millennials or whatever, you want to categorize people, but they tended to be older. They tended to be more mature. They tended to be spending their time largely on Facebook because that's where they were connecting with, their grandchildren or their adult children, looking at pictures and all of those things, finding recipes, finding, high school reunions, all of those things that, people tend
Cat
to
memes.
do. Cat videos, yes. Those are my most popular posts is when I say, "Share your furry friends." By far, they exceed any, engagement, and so I wanted to meet people where they were. And so for me, for my audience, the knitters that tend to gravitate towards my patterns as they are now tend to be on Facebook. And so that was how I picked that. And also because of that ability for it to be private, to have that two-way conversation as compared to, say, Instagram or a public Facebook page where um, you don't have that same connection.
Yeah, I really
Well,
like
that
this idea of meeting the makers where they're at. I think this kind of undergirding should happen on all the levels that we are with our people. So it's really cool.
I think that's a big giant takeaway from this is to go where your makers are. Go where
Mhm.
the people are that you want to build a community for instead of I want to build it here. How do I get them here? You know.
Yeah,
Mhm. Yes.
exactly. And just to take a quick break, those of you who are here live, we'd love to hear your conversation with Jessica too. So throw any questions you have for her into the comments. We're watching and we're here.
So
Um,
Jessica, what were the challenges that you came up against in getting your makers to engage with you? Like you've got this space now, you figured out that's where you want to be, and that's where you're finding people who want your patterns. And like, what are the challenges in getting them to engage with you?
yeah, and I'm gonna hop in really. I have a Facebook group, and sometimes my members say, "Oh, I never see your posts," because that's part of the Facebook mess.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Um, so challenges are, of course, the algorithm, and you find that anywhere that you go. If I have something important, I'll tend to mark it as a featured post that kind of sends up a notification to more people, but I don't keep it just as a billboard. I want them to engage, and I ask other questions, things that are not specifically knitting, but kind of get to know you, icebreaker, things like I mentioned, pet pictures. Everyone loves to share their pets. We include the feathered ones too, not just the furry ones.
Mhm. Pets and
Uh,
projects, right?
Pets and projects. Yeah, I think that is, and also exciting things. I do different events throughout the year that bring new people in and also keep the existing members active and excited. And I think that having some big events throughout the year help to keep the engagement up. Um, the algorithm is always the biggest challenge for anyone, and I wish that it wasn't because it's not fair to all of, we're all small, teeny tiny micro businesses. We are one person, maybe, if you're a big name designer with a large audience, maybe you have a VA, or moderators or other things like that. But just keeping them coming back for the conversation so that they're still there when you want to promote something, to launch
Right.
something.
Yeah, so do you create events around your patterns, around your designs that are launching, or what kind of events do you
That's
host?
what I was gonna ask too.
So the two big things that I have done, I do local yarn store day is a really big thing for me. Having worked in a yarn store, and even prior to that, I owned a retail stationery business for years. So I know firsthand how hard retail is and how hard the yarn industry is, how hard it is to be a yarn store owner. I think that one of the first things I discovered working in the yarn store is how little knitting the owner of a yarn store actually gets to
That's
do.
so true.
She's doing books and inventory and fixing people's mistakes and, all of those things. But it's a hard business to be in, and I think the yarn stores are kind of the lifeblood of our fiber community. It's where you go to get help. It's where you go to buy yarn. And so it's important to me. So I have a big knit along, and I do, knitters can get a special pattern design just for that event as part of yarn store day if they buy the yarn to knit it from a store. So the stores get the codes, and the knitters receive the codes when they purchase the yarn to make it. And I just wrapped up, I do a big handmade holiday event starting in July each year, which again is not centered on my patterns, but just on community, on getting to know each other, on coming together with a common goal. And I think that anything that brings people together is a great way to keep engagement up, and to build the audience.
So do you find that people in your community like get connected at a deeper level, or is it just talking about their things?
I find that so my free group has we were 2,300-ish members, and it is
That's a lot.
they they connect, in different ways. I think when we do these events and I have knit nights on Zoom, they get to know each other a little bit better that way. They get to, have a face and a personality to put with the name. And again, that's another thing on the larger public social media where you don't necessarily have that unless you have um, direct engagement like knit nights and things like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So there's a great question here from our audience. Liz asks, "I'm not savvy on Facebook, so this question may be silly. Since your Facebook group is private, how do people become a part of it?" Yeah, that's a great question. How do you advertise for it? How do you get people to join?
So I post about it everywhere. And I do a lot of cross promotion with my email list. Like if I post something, a fun and engaging post in the group, then I may send an email to my newsletter and say, hey, we're talking about this in the group. Come join the conversation. So that kind of brings people in from the email list. And yeah, it's, in the similar ways where you would promote your email list, I'm also promoting my group. And it is private in the sense that you can go to the group and click on a button to join, but only people who have joined see the content that is inside the group.
Yeah, that's
And then do
great.
you need is there any requirement for someone who wants to join? Like, is there a questionnaire for them to fill out, or an approval you need to do?
There is, I'm kind of a little bit lenient on it. They kind of have to answer, a couple of questions just to show that they're not a bot.
Yeah, there's a lot
Right,
of
Um,
bots.
it's
right.
simple things like how long have you been knitting, or crocheting, or what is something that you struggle with. And that helps to give me, as I plan, workshops and things like that, that helps to know. I can always kind of scroll through that list and see what people are having a hard time with. So it's a couple of quick questions. And, if someone comes to join and they are part of 37 other knitting groups, then they may not have to answer the questions. I might just, admit them, because
That
most
makes
most
sense.
bots are not that, in the knitting community.
Do you have to spend a lot of time in the group? Like, does it take up a big amount of your work time to engage with your community?
I would say it's really a few minutes a day. Posts I schedule out. A lot of, content gets just pre-scheduled so that it just appears in the group. My favorite thing about posting in the group as compared to on public social media is that the posts can be really short. They
Yeah.
can just ask a question to spark a conversation. I don't have to research any hashtags.
Yeah.
I don't have to think about what hashtags am I getting engagement from, what, am I not getting engagement from. So it's a split second, and then coming back throughout the day, if I have a spare moment. I try to batch that time, like you would with, say, Instagram comments or whatever. You're not spending your whole day sitting and responding to comments or questions, but, you know, take a break for some coffee and, respond to anything, special that comes up. But they do have conversations back and forth, which I love.
And for those of you who are uninformed about this term batch, we use this when we're solo entrepreneurs, where we use dedicated time in chunks for certain tasks where we can do a bunch of it all at once. So it's batching.
Yes.
And Francis, I see your comment about patterns and being visually impaired. We'll get to that. We're gonna segue into talking about patterns. Christina, you want to grab
Yeah,
the
so I think something that makes your sort of your approach and your pattern stand out is like your approach and how you go about like how has and it like, how has your experience parenting your kids like influenced your pattern writing and how you approach designing?
So I can talk about that, and also, hi, Frances. I know Frances.
That's
She's a member of my group and also of my paid community. Um, and so I can kind of weave that in as well. So my life experiences, I would say, have influenced my pattern writing. I think that a lot of what has influenced it is teaching knitters and crocheters. In addition to working in the yarn shop, I did that up until a little bit through COVID. And I also run a library group. So I try to have my hands and my mind in that sense of a newer knitter, um, struggling to, figure things out. And with my children who have some learning differences, I discovered that you can't just tell someone who's never done something to put on your shoes. You have to really take that step back and say, okay, in order to put on the shoes, what are the teeny tiny steps that they need to know? What are the things they need to understand? They need to find their socks. They need to find their shoes. They need to put the socks on. They need to open the shoes, untie the laces if there's a knot, and really breaking it down step by step, because that big piece of instruction, and I was comparing it to when we were chatting in the green room, where you have knitting patterns where they say cast on 100 stitches, follow chart A and follow chart B. And that is certainly, a way to write knitting patterns. And I
right.
think it's also a way that patterns used to be written with more expectation that the knitter understands. And I think that as patterns have evolved, and as designers have evolved, and as technology has evolved, where a self-published pattern there's no limit on the number of pages that you can have,
Right.
as compared to a printed hard copy publication where there's a certain number of pages and you're fitting things in around ads or whatever other content. So it's more important to me to have a thoroughly well-written pattern that walks them through the steps, that gives them video help for something that's tricky, where in addition to writing it out, they can also watch the video, and see how I'm doing it. Because as you know, there's you know, lots of different ways to do, say, a bobble stitch or whatever. And so it helps, I think, for those newer knitters to have that support. And so that's really important to me. And Francis was asking about the my low vision pattern. So I don't have it for all of my patterns, but it is something that I am working to include on more of my patterns, is low vision accessible patterns and patterns that work with screen readers. And I have people in my life who have struggled with vision loss, and the thought of being a maker your whole life and then losing that ability to read those patterns and not be able to continue making, my heart aches for those people. And so I think that it's important for designers, when they can, to make things accessible. So I don't, charge any extra for that. It's just where I feel like I can fit that in. I do add that. And I know you guys know about those patterns.
Yeah. So
It's where it's a much larger print, say a 22 or 24 point font. There's no abbreviations, and everything is really written out. And instructions are kind of shifted in some ways, where it might say repeat these rows 4 times, instead of, so that they know what they're getting into before they approach that, instead of row 1, row 2, and then repeat these rows however many times.
yeah, and for those of you in our audience who haven't watched it yet, we did interview Renee Van Hoy, who is a accessibility editor, and you can go back and watch that episode if you want to find out more about how to make your patterns accessible to those that are visually impaired.
Yeah, she's
Renee
who I learned.
also Renee also manages the Accessible Patterns Index. So
Mhm.
it's a website you can go to where you can find all these accessible patterns too that have been.
Yeah, I actually did, this past year. You have got all the Black Friday, Thanksgiving weekend things. So there's, Black Friday and Small Business Saturday and Cyber Monday. And then on Tuesday is what is known as Giving Tuesday.
Yes.
And so I had my paid membership open at the time. And what I did was I donated a portion of the proceeds from my sales from November to the Accessible Patterns Index.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
that's
awesome.
fantastic.
I love that.
I
Good
and
idea.
I Can you talk a little bit about your focus on making things very accessible for this is what you've chosen for your audience, is what I'm trying to get at. Like, not every designer is going to choose to make step by step by step by step patterns or to include videos. Like, this is your personal decision
Yes.
for your business. And can you talk a little bit about how you came into that? You mentioned a little bit about being in the frame of mind of a beginner.
Yeah, so that's kind of been my thing. I mean, I generally say that my patterns are designed for that, like, adventurous beginner knitter, that, approaching intermediate, that where they've mastered their knits and they've mastered their pearls, and they don't really need to learn how to knit, but they want to make more beautiful things, more beautiful stitches, and they just need that hand holding a little bit to just take them and lead them to being able to, do different stitches. And having those videos gives that ability for them to watch me knit. That's when I do a course on a pattern, that's kind of a section that I include, or I do a big knit along, is where I'll actually not just have the video for the one stitch, but actually for the repeat. of the stitches. And then I also make, in my videos, I include both English style and continental knitting
Mhm.
in that same video because some things
Wow.
are executed a little bit differently.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh,
Brioche. Brioche is
yes,
completely
so
different.
brioche is an excellent example. I just wrapped up a big course that I did to take people and introduce them to brioche knitting. And
Right.
the thing that I find important as far as teaching classes go and making things accessible is to have a class on brioche where it's, a big giant loop of a cowl or a big flat scarf or a big, shawl as your first brioche pattern is really hard for a lot of knitters. And so the class that I just did, we started with an ear warmer, something small, something that gives a quick win, something that they can get through and finish and say, wow, I did that. That excitement and that feeling of being able to actually take a project from beginning to end is really important for encouraging knitters, I think.
This is really interesting to me because I feel like as makers, when we advance in our skills, we lose sight of what it's like to be a beginner.
Mhm.
And this is a superpower for you is to come back into those beginning shoes to see things how a beginner maker will need to understand to have success.
Yeah.
So let's segue into the question because I know this is a super interest for you is what advice would you give to a designer just starting out? I know you're interested not just in beginning makers, but beginning designers too.
Um, what advice would I give? Um, I think that it's important to have your patterns test knit, to have your patterns tech edited. Tech editing wasn't something that I even knew existed in the beginning of designing, and I think that it is so important to have those eyes to make sure that the pattern is correct, and then those eyes of test knitters from all different, skill levels. There are I've seen test calls where, you're expected to know X, Y, and Z, and maybe on a short time frame, maybe that makes sense, but as a whole, I try to have testers test my patterns that are new to whatever that type of pattern is, because once you put it out there, you can't control what level of knitter is purchasing your pattern.
Right.
Well, I think that also can help you test your methods. Like you're doing some services here in what you're teaching and how you're breaking down your patterns by offering video as well as the written word, right? And
Right.
by showing it in continental as well as English. Like those are all different ways people learn and different ways people knit. And that's we're recognizing that is something that you need to have tested too, right? Like, is this way that I'm going about breaking these steps down working?
Yeah, I think that the most humbling thing is, um, I I I run a library group, and it's knitters and crocheters, and many of them are, it's Mondays at noon, so there's not many people in the younger age groups that are available Mondays at noon to take, a knit and crochet class, and so most of them, are older in years. And I just taught, we break for the summer. So in June, we just finished. I had 3 knitters who were all over 80
Wow.
knit their first sweaters. They'd been knitting
Woo!
forever and they
Wow.
had never knit sweaters before, and one of them I taught how to knit in the round for the first time. So if you have the opportunity to teach in person,
Yes.
I think that even if it's not a group, even if it is just a friend who's interested in knitting, if you have that opportunity to have that face to face, that one-on-one time with someone where you can teach them how to do something, I think that gives you such a different perspective than, I think as advanced makers, which, most designers I would say are, um, we kind of live in this bubble where everyone can knit beautiful lace and brioche and cables and all of these things, and you get into this view of what knitting is. You go to the fiber festivals or fairs or whatever, and you see everyone wearing these beautiful color work sweaters. And that's wonderful and that's lovely, but that's not where so much of the knitting community is.
Right. We're all on a continuum of increasing our skills for I love to hear that people are making sweaters at 80. I love it.
That's awesome. Yeah, and then you're right. You can get lost in that and forget, but there's more to it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
absolutely more. So tell us, what are you excited about now? Like what's gets you up in the morning and get you working on your business?
I am designing my first garment, so
Ooh.
that's what I'm really excited about.
We have a few episodes on that if you need some help.
I will be watching them. I watched some of your more recent episodes in the past week. And I've watched others, before, but I'm gonna dive in and find those sweater episodes.
Yeah.
So that's the project I think I am most excited about. That's what's on my needles right now. And I think for a lot of us, whatever we are designing in the moment is hopefully our most favorite, most exciting thing.
Yeah. So, but we also talked about something else that you're working on. What kind of project are you working on?
So, Kristina and Sarah kind of inspired me a little bit. I have this Facebook group, and the other thing I wanted to mention, it was just in general about groups, about engagement, is that I was looking at my stats recently, and you can see in a Facebook group what your engagement is. And so in June, having just wrapped up a bunch of big, exciting things happening in the group, coming off doing the big shawl for local yarn store day and all of that. My Facebook group had, I think it was 70% engagement,
Whoa.
That's amazing.
Holy
That's
cow.
fantastic.
which is not something that you find, Instagram. If you get 10 or 20% of people to see your post, that's like a banner day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Um,
amazing.
So that's, people seeing your posts, reading them, looking at the photos, all of that stuff. Not necessarily, does every post have that many comments on it, but that was something that I think that every designer deserves to have a community supporting their business. Deserves to have that place where, if I'm debating between a couple of different things, I can go in the group and say, this or that. Like, what do you like more? Or what are you interested in making? Or I'm thinking about teaching a class on brioche. Is anyone interested? And you can kind of build in public and you can learn where your audience is and what they're into and what their interests are. So I put together a little guide of 5 things that I wish that I knew before I started my group. And so I made a little page where you can download that if anyone is interested.
I
And
can throw it in the chat.
oh, perfect. And so it's doublethestitches.com/5things. And so you can just go, it's just your name and your email. And then you'll be also on my email list because I am working on a course to teach people more about how to build their groups and set themselves up for success for having a Facebook group. So that's something that is coming up, but not ready to share yet. So I have a little taste of, of some of the things that I wanted to share. So that's just a little PDF download. And then you'll be the first to know when the actual course is ready. And it will be, I think, a 3-week course with some with lessons that are pre-recorded, because one of the things I found in my communities is that I have people with all different schedules from all over the world, and it's very hard to find a time to do all of the lessons where there's no unicorn or golden hour that works for everyone.
Right.
And so the lessons will be pre-recorded so you can watch them at whatever time fits into your schedule. And then I'm going to do a couple of office hours and those will be recorded. So if you can't make them live, then you can ask your questions and I'll answer them, during the Zoom, and I'll put the recording there so that you can watch kind of that live Q&A also.
It makes my heart swell that you are so willing to share what you've learned about building community with other designers. It we all need to lift each other up to be able to do this work even better and to meet the maker's needs. So thank you. I'm glad we inspired you. Oh my gosh, that just makes me so happy.
It can be hard to, it can be hard to know where to find the information when you even if you are willing to go get it and learn it,
Yes.
it can be hard to figure out what's good and what's bad advice. So I love that
Yeah,
you're
and
doing this. I think it's
there's
great.
so much, like, we'll call them bro marketers.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
There is
Yeah.
so much bro marketer advice out there, email your people 3 times a day and just, go really hard. And I think as crafters, as makers, as a, yarn community, I think that we're just a little bit different, a little bit softer. I think it's a little bit softer touch. Um, and so I will never be a bro marketer.
Yay. I think we need to have a femme market. There needs to be
Yeah.
there needs to be a way of approaching things that is how we do it, which is awesome. I think it's okay to kind of kick against that a little bit of push, 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 push. So
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, thank you
on
so
that,
much for sharing all this with us about your community, how it works, how you approach your pattern writing, all this stuff. It's so awesome to hear all this from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
all right.
Sarah.
Oh, and all right, here we go. Are you ready?
I
So this
think
is
so.
this is the question that we love to ask all of our guests at the end of an interview is what is your favorite knitting or crocheting notion? What can't you live without?
So can I share 2 things?
Of
Absolutely.
course.
Okay. So one is a knitting or crochet notion, and the other is a tool that I use, for for teaching.
Gotcha.
All
So
right.
we'll do 2 different categories here. So my favorite notion comes from my dear friend Dawn, who owns Twice Sheer Cheap. I don't know if you guys
Same.
met her.
Yes,
My
I know
all-time
her.
favorite, um,
Oh,
these
Jessica.
row
Oh,
counters.
that's mine too. Oh my gosh, I love Dawn from way back. Oh my God, those are
Yeah.
amazing. Those row counters.
Yes, and so these are actually, um, they are odd even row counters. So when you are there's 2 of them. So when you are knitting flat, oops, it's flipped. So one side is the odd rows, one side is the even rows,
Oh,
because with
cool.
the long chain that has, that counts till 10, you can only change it on one side of your work. So you have to go all the way to the end and then go all the way back and then skip a number so that you can make sure that you're counting the right number of rows. So these are her odd
Yeah.
row counters. So one is, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9,
Oh.
and the other is 2, 4, 6, 8, and 0. Um, so that's my favorite.
Christina just got a hot flash.
That you guys
See that?
so bad. I can't take it. Whew.
Um, so that's my favorite. I love all of her row counters and all of the things, that they do, and I know her since before she was selling notions, where she, way back, we built our handmade businesses together. She was recycling yarn, and I was knitting for babies. And so we've both come so far, but it's so wonderful to she's such a wonderful person. It's so nice to see how she has grown and thrived and flourished and pivoted and is always just offering things that to make knitters happy.
I still have a skein of her yarn, like from way back. She even recycled a sweater of mine. I didn't know about those wrong side, right side row counters. You gotta be kidding me. Like, oh my God, that's so cool.
Okay, I just put those into the chat for those of you who need to like buy now. It's there.
Right? And then the other thing is, see if I can pull this over. So
Oh
this
yeah.
is my lamp. It holds it's Canvas is the company. So you put your phone in there. It supports it. It has a built-in, I don't know if you can see, I don't want to blind everyone, a built-in light at the bottom. And it pivots and swivels and does all the things so you can get it really to the exact spot that you want it. And it's so much better than like the ring light that holds the phone. I had so much trouble when I was first making videos because it would fall over and I'd have to stop the video and then I'd have to fix it. And then the angle was never the same because the light was never the same and you had to reposition it so that it wouldn't fall over. And so that was something I invested in myself because I said I deserve to not have to fight with the ring light. If videos are a part of, of what I'm doing and what I'm offering and putting out there, then I need an easy way. And it just sits on my desk on the corner and I just pull it over whenever I need to.
Is it like a stand or does it like screw onto your desk?
They have it both ways. It's on a really heavy,
like a weighted stand,
like a heavy base.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Oh,
It's on
gotcha.
weightlifting.
Yeah, it is. It's very heavy, but that's what keeps it from falling over. And so it makes it so easy that I know that it's here and it's set up and it's ready to go whenever I need it. As part of my paid community, I also offer priority pattern support. So if they're struggling with one of my patterns, where the general public, we'll call it, I'll type an answer, I'll respond and offer pattern support in that way. But sometimes my paid members, I'll make them a video for something that they're struggling with.
So it's something that you really need, that you're using all the time.
That I'm using it all the time and I don't have to set it up every time I need it.
It makes it easy.
Because anytime that you have to, where there's roadblocks and barriers in the way to doing the thing, it makes it so much harder to do it and it makes you resent doing it.
Right.
Maybe resent is a little strong of a word, but
no, resentment's real in business. It's real.
Yeah, it makes you not excited to do it, or you have to carve out so much time because the conditions have to be just right. And so having this by my side on my desk, I know that I can just swing it over and just record as needed.
I love that. The value of the right tools.
It's so important to have the right tools for the work to make it easy for us to do the things that help us overcome the barriers, but also our audience to overcome the barrier of what's holding them back.
So here's a barrier, guys. We just got the email that we're going to be live in 15 minutes. So it looks like I set that email up to go out at the wrong time. So many of you were relying on that email to come an hour ago. And we got a really nice comment for you, Jessica, in the comments from Jen, who says that your focus on and devotion to teaching and fostering community is commendable. Knitting is a shared skill that is best kept alive person to person. And we certainly are.
Absolutely. I wasn't fortunate enough to have a grandmother who knit to, teach me at 5 years old, knee to knee and all of those things. I learned crocheting. Someone taught me. I was a volunteer advisor in my 20s for a high school youth group. And one of the things that we did it taught them a lot of leadership and things like that. And so we would go away to think Dirty Dancing Hotel, in the Catskills. And so one of our jobs was sit in the hallway and keep the boys in the boys' room and the girls in the girls' room. With teenagers, you need actual warm bodies. You can't just tell them, okay, be good kids. We'll see you in the morning. And so sitting in the hallway at 2:00 in the morning, there was one of the other women was sitting there and she was crocheting something and she gave me, I was curious and I was asking a lot of questions. And so because we all travel with more yarn and tools than we could ever possibly use, she's like, here, have a ball of yarn and a hook and I'll teach you. And so that I said, I haven't, put the yarn down since, but we were making my grand plan was I was going to make a queen size blanket using Red Heart Super Saver and a J crochet hook, single crochet in the back loop only.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
That
needless
thing
to
would
say, that
weigh
project did
10
not
tons.
become but it set me on this path, and I'm so grateful to her for teaching me, for getting me involved, because who knows, what I would be doing or where I would be if it wasn't for that.
I love that. Yarn evangelism at 2 a.m. in a hallway. It's
Yes.
wonderful. Well, let's wrap this up. Where can people find you online? I know there are probably some people in our audience who'd like to check out your group.
So if you go to doublestitches.com/the group, keep it nice and simple. I don't know if I gave you guys that link.
Oh, no,
Sorry.
I
we
have
got
the
the
link.
link.
So what
We
did
got
you
the
say?
link.
/group?
The group. I
The
think
group.
the
The
more
group. Yeah,
the group.
the group.
So you're welcome to join my community, if you're interested in that. And then there is that PDF download, which the link is up there above, doublethestitches.com/5things. You'll find that in the chat. And I'm on Ravelry as Jessica Ays, and my website is doublethestitches.com, and
So
Instagram.
tell us the story behind your business name, which is really creative.
So I have twin boys, and I did not sleep very much,
Go
as
figure.
times two. And
Ooh,
so one sleepless night, I remember like waking up in the middle of the night and thinking that, if I ever wanted my children to have handmade things, I was going to need to make double the stitches. And
Yeah.
so that became a thing, became the business. And I've taken that name from when I was selling my finished items and all the way through, because it just feels like it's part of my identity and who I am.
Well, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your vision of community with us, and with everything that you've shared is so valuable. Thanks a lot for being here today.
Thank
so
you
much
for
part of who you
having
are. It's so great. Yeah. Thanks for coming.
me.
And thanks to everyone who joined us live. This is awesome. We'll see you soon, Jessica. We're going to
All right.
take care of yourself.
Take care. It was lovely to chat with you all.
It was
All right.
awesome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. So, hey, everyone. Oh, I just got really woozy. This broadcast is made possible by Kristina. Jump in.
Patreon
Mhm.
and our patrons on Patreon, who are fantastic. Sarah's fading out into another dimension. That's all.
Woo!
Our patrons are so everything. Okay, like they're just it's a group of really amazing people that help us help each other, and they really are the reason we can do this, because it's a lot to do. So join us on Patreon. You can find out what we're doing over there, and it's good. It's really good.
Yeah,
So thank
we'd
you
love to
guys.
have you join us. So we have a very active group of both designers and tech editors, and we love to talk all the nerdy stuff that we talk about here on every episode. So, and if you are interested in hearing more about these episodes, do subscribe.
Oop. I
Yeah.
did it again, man. Keep
We're
clicking
just
the wrong thing.
I'm hitting batting zero, so I'm just gonna sit back and let you talk.
So you can subscribe. You can. What did they say? What are the don't forget to
Hit the
subscribe and
bell.
ring that bell. Yeah. So put notifications on, like the video. You can subscribe here, and if you sign up for our newsletter, you usually will get an email ahead of the broadcast to let you know that we're going live.
Mhm.
And also every week we send a newsletter. So and those are awesome, of course. And when you subscribe to YouTube, you get notifications on YouTube too that we're gonna go live. And you can leave comments on the videos before we even go live, so that we get to your questions first. So yeah.
And for those of you who are interested in becoming knitwear designers, we have a book coming for you that will be published at the end of October. And we'll, down in the comments below, there's the link to order the knitting pattern writing handbook, which is almost completely off the press.
Oh
We're
my
almost
God, you
there.
guys.
So
It's
soon.
almost there. And it's gonna be like a little tech editor in your back pocket. That's kind of our goal with this
Mhm.
book. So
This is crazy. I'm just fuzzy.
You're in another dimension. Still talking about our book, even in the other dimension.
All right. And join us next month, same time, same channel.
September 18th at noon Eastern. We're going to be back with another guest, which is we just love doing, love having people come on and share all the things that they know with all of us. So join us, and
thank you
thanks for being here, everybody.
Yeah, we loved chatting with you today. All right, you ready for the outro? Here we go.
Do it.